Hello, and welcome back to Silver Bear Books, or welcome if this is the first time that I'm seeing you. My name is Adam. I'm a teacher from Queensland, Australia, and I love to read books. I created this channel so I'd have a place to talk about the books that I'm reading and maybe start engaging with a community that I haven't had a chance to talk to very much. And I also wanted to show my children that you don't need a big expensive setup to join in on these kinds of things. You can do it just out of passion. So today I'm going to rank the books that I've read so far this year. Bit of a slow reading year at the start. I think January, February, March, I only read 4 books total. But then after that, the pace picked up, and I've got something like 30, including epic poems and such. I'm not counting the manga or comic books that I've read this year just because it would make the list way too complicated. But this is a tier ranking of the books I've read so that you get an idea what I like, what I don't like, and I'll give just a little bit of context for each book. My tier rankings are special edition hardcover. If I loved it, go out and buy the coolest copy that you can. Hardcover, go out and buy something nice. Paperback, go out, buy the cheapest version you can. If you can get it at an op shop, that's if you can get it for a couple of dollars, and there's more than a few books on this list that fit in that category, and donate it or trash it, depending on just how strange the book is. So I guess I'll do this in order that I read them this year. So the first book that I read this year was Sabriel by Garth Nix, and I'm going to put that firmly in paperback. Interesting magic system, characters maybe not my favorite element to it, and fantasy wise probably a few tropes that you've seen before, but it's still most definitely worth a read. This is How You Lose the Time War, special edition hardcover. This book is so hard to categorize, but I found it absolutely amazing. Something with such a strange, non-linear plot, and yet I felt myself so emotionally attached to these characters. Definitely special edition hardcover. My friend's Frederick Bachman. I will admit I am a sucker for Frederick Bachman. There are books that he's written that I cried through most of, and I do not cry very often at books. Special edition hardcover. If you want both found family and tragedy and loyalty and all of those wonderful things, Bachman has a direct line to my heart. So, special edition hardcover. Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I am going to put this in if you can get it at an op shop, but I gave it 3 stars because the description of environment and atmosphere is something that should be and is taught in English classes. I felt the oppressive heat of the Congo. I felt the human misery. I felt all of those really disgusting, icky feelings that this period of history and this place in the world should give you. The only problem was it was slow and I got bored a few times. And given the book's not that long, that's not a great indicator. So it's probably worth having a paperback copy, but given its age, you'll find it at an op shop. The next is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I am going to put this in hardcover, and it's kind of getting the opposite of the Heart of Darkness treatment from me. That as a book, I found it quite repetitive. A lot of things happen again and again and again. I think the same character gets like 5 blood transfusions from about 5 different people. And that is a little bit problematic, but much like Heart of Darkness, it gets this really atmospheric bonus point from me, as well as for being the progenitor of an entire genre. So I'm going to say get a hardcover. It is a classic for a reason, but don't go into it expecting it to have sort of modern sensibilities. Valise is a monster romance where a detective forms a connection with a giant spider lady. This was on my list because I wanted to read a few books this year that were really outside of my comfort zone. You'll see 2 of them on this list already. Uh, it's going to go into donate it or trash it. I don't think you could donate this book. I think you're going to have to trash it. I gave it 2 stars because it was morbidly fascinating, and the mystery slash crime component of it was probably better than it had any right to be. But at the same time, it was still really just an excuse to have a Spider Girl with great big boobies and um, not my bag. I have no problem with smut or intimacy in books. That's not a thing that bothers me. But this particular subgenre maybe isn't for me, or maybe I just didn't appreciate it. I don't know. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, definitely special edition hardcover. If I think it takes the place of my favorite sci-fi that I've ever read. Really accessible science, super relatable characters. Um, I want Rocky to be my best friend. And the successful film adaptation, I'm glad, drew even more attention to what was already a fantastic book, and definitely worth special edition hardcover. Go for it. The next was Wuthering Heights by which Bronte sister does Wuthering Heights? For goodness sake, I am an English teacher. I should be able to remember this, but let me do a quick check. It is Emily, far out. Sorry about that. So, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I'm going to put this in paperback. I could probably put it in the Opshop one because you will find a copy at an Opshop, but um, moody, atmospheric. Everybody's a horrible person, but for really, really understandable reasons. The only thing I think I didn't really like about it was there's a framing device there which I think was intended to soften the blows between these. Every time you're with Kathy and Heathcliff, you're miserable. They are people who have been placed into circumstances that turn them into really horrible people. So I assume the framing device is just an excuse to step out of that a little bit. But I'm going to be honest with you, if you're reading this book, you're probably doing it to be in that space. So keep it all. Don't give me the pointless framing device because it really slowed the book down. It could have been probably 70 pages lighter and not lost much. In fact, I think it would have improved the atmosphere. The next one is the first nonfiction on this list, How to Kill a Witch, The Patriarchy's Guide to Silencing Women. It is written by two women who host a podcast on the witch trials of Scotland, and it was really good. I enjoyed it. It was a really good historical exploration of a period in our history that I am not as familiar with. Most people know about the witch trials in Salem and have heard all of those stories or seen the Crucible or that kind of thing. This is an exploration of what was actually a much bigger witch trial. So, most certainly worth exploring, 100%. The next one is my next on the list of books that made me really uncomfortable, The Morning Glory Milking Farm. It is, you know what, I can summarize the whole plot in one sentence. A girl gets a job manually masturbating minotaurs. Say that 3 times fast, manually masturbating minotaurs. Anyway, the point is, it was morbidly fascinating. I did not enjoy it, but at the same time, if you're a person for whom creature romances are your thing, you'll probably like it, but definitely not for me. And it's also going to go into the trash it category because I don't think that you can give this to an op shop in good conscience. But that is your decision. The next is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I know it's a classic. I know it's a slice of life looking at a really particular group of people at a really particular a period of time. I was bored. The I don't know whether or not it just wasn't my thing. Ernest Hemingway is a phenomenal writer. He manages to really bring to life the places that he's in. I just didn't care, which is kind of curious. I can appreciate it on a technical level without having particularly enjoyed the read. The next is Dungeon Crawler Carl. I heard so much about this. It was hyped up so much and lived up to everything. If you're a person that likes video games or Dungeons and Dragons and pop culture and all those kind of things, if you are the kind of person who maybe Ready Player One was a movie that you really enjoyed or a book that you liked, this is going to be so much fun. Princess Donut and Carl are two of my favorite new characters, and this was definitely my favorite read of the entire year in terms of how much fun I had. So between this Time War Hail Mary and My Friends, Carl is the one I definitely had the most fun with. It is over the top, bombastic, colorful, creative, and I had an absolute blast. It's worth a special edition hardcover every day of the week. I am looking to organize my collection of these books. It's just going to cost me an absolute fortune to do that, so we'll see what happens. I have four children. The next is The Little Prince. It's a book that was on my top 100 books to read before you die kind of list that I've got going. And it was delightful. It was so sweet, so nice. Um, really simple. The plot is nothing extravagant or anything that you probably haven't seen before in various children's books, but it was just heartwarming. Probably more heartbreaking than you might think at certain points. Definitely worth getting a paperback. May well be worth a hardcover. Really up to you, but I really enjoyed it. The next was the Joy Luck Club. And I'd heard about this so much, and I had no idea what it was about. But it follows the stories of four Chinese American migrants and their children and their interrelationships between, mother and child. And it was absolutely heartbreaking, heartwarming, heart wrenching, all of those things. It is a wonderful exploration of, yeah, of generational differences and the migrant experience, which again is something I've not got any experience with. So being able to see and explore that is a really fascinating experience for me. Definitely worth a hardcover. The next one was Tusks of Extinction, which I think won either the Hugo or the Nebula for novella. And it's really hard to explain. It is mammoths have been brought back to life using technology, and the people who brought them back are going to really extreme lengths to prevent the hunting of these mammoths. I can't tell you more without spoiling it. Special edition hardcover. It was one of the stranger reads I've had, but my goodness, was it fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. So well worth it. A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but about a little girl who travels through space and time to save her father. Um, this one's hard to categorize because on one hand the themes were really strong. I really enjoyed it. As an English teacher, I could see where this would fit in a classroom. It was a little bit random. I'm going to go paperback. I got it in a little library on the side of the road for free, but I think it would have been worth going out and buying a copy. It's certainly something I'm keeping my copy of it so that my children can read it as they grow up. I think it's something that young people should read when they're little. My oldest son is 11, so I think he's probably in the right bracket for that. And an adventure led by a young girl, but that any young person should be able to relate to. So that was, yeah, that was an interesting one. Hard to categorize. Howl's Moving Castle. I love the movie, so I thought I'd read the book. I got a copy of the sequel for free, and that sort of pushed me into reading the first one so I would know what the heck was going on. Diana Wynne Jones is a delightful writer. I really enjoyed this world, these characters. It was so fun and colorful. Definitely worth getting a paperback copy of. So I may as well move into Castle in the Air, which is this sequel. I say sequel in that the worlds aren't strongly connected until right at the very end. So it's more of a how do I put it? A continuation of the world, but not of the characters per se. So if you're expecting all the characters from the first one, you'll be disappointed for 75% of the read. But at the same time, it still had Wyn Jones's trademark whimsy and fun characters. It takes a lot of inspiration from the Tales of the Arabian Nights, so there's definitely plenty to enjoy there as well. White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I am going to put it here, and I think that a lot of people are probably going to call me a blasphemer for that. His writing is wonderful. The characters were um, really strong, three dimensional. The issue is in a book that's so short, I found it to be, I still found filler in there. Stuff that I'm sure serves a purpose, but I was, if I'm getting bored in a book that's that short at any point, there are a few issues for me. So it's definitely worth a read. It is really well written for the most part, but I didn't quite get the same really visceral connection to it that a lot of people seem to. A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, definitely a hardcover. I didn't give it 5 stars because I think, as an introduction to the series, there was a lot of the laying the groundwork that needed to be done. There's always an element of that not being necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but I really related strongly to a lot of the characters, and the world does seem like something I'm definitely going to continue to explore. The Will of the Many by James Islington? Islington. I'm Australian. I really should figure this one out. Definitely. 5 star read. I sort of, I think I gave it 4.5, but I do have a bit of a penchant for hardcover special edition fantasy collections, so I'm going to put it up a category. The sort of based on ancient Rome, it is a fantasy world where there is a strict class system, and each level of the caste system has to cede a portion of their will, their energy, to the class above them. And so as you go further and further up the hierarchy, people are almost godlike in their strength. It had wonderful characters, a three-dimensional world, a strong magic system. I think the only thing about it that sort of knocked it down half a point for me was that there was a fascinating world being shown here, and owing to it being the first book, we're isolated from that for chunks of it for a really good reason, I'll admit. But at the same time, I wanted more of that world in this particular book. So it did lose just a little bit for me, but it was still really, really good. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. It's one of those books that I think my little brother said he read it in high school. And as a high school teacher, I've definitely seen people teach this. I never had. So I thought, hey, maybe this is a book I'll read and might teach in a class at some point. And yeah, I probably will. The lead character is on the autism spectrum and is trying to solve the murder of his neighbor's dog. And family and tragedy and betrayal and lies and all that kind of stuff, with a character who is incapable of fully understanding those things. It is an absolutely fascinating read. Definitely something if you want to understand a certain type of ASD. I've certainly talked with students who said they felt seen by this book. I've also met students on the autism spectrum who said they felt stereotyped by this book, so take that into account as well, but definitely a good read. The Great Gatsby, if you can get it at an op shop. I will completely confess that Fitzgerald's prose is wonderful. He writes really well. His characters are all fleshed out and three-dimensional. The plot of the story is interesting, but I was so bored. I hated everyone. And I think the unfortunate thing is, if even if I understand why a character is the way that they are, I still need to be able to get behind them. Gatsby is a prick. Uh, Daisy, I'll give a pass to because she's a woman placed in a certain circumstance in a certain period of time. Nick is a sycophantic wacko. I just didn't like anyone, and it really. I can not like characters and still really find them interesting to read. That just wasn't the case here. It's definitely worth a read, but it wasn't my bag. We'll go The Handmaid's Tale next, and I'm going to say that that is worth a hardcover. This is one of those really weird ones. I've heard so much criticism of Atwood's writing style that it focuses on insignificant detail, or it's juvenile almost in its delivery, which I could not disagree more. I found Ovred's description of insignificant things or focus on things that didn't seem important, or her hyperfixation on certain elements, A absolutely phenomenal way of characterizing somebody who is trapped in this situation and has nothing else. You have no power, you have no control, and you're forced to focus on these things that, yeah, may be insignificant, but they're the only thing you've got. They're what your mind has to focus on, mysteries to unravel, or details to discover, because that's just what you need to do to cope with the existence that you're living in. I found the claustrophobic feeling, yeah, worked really well for me. So definitely worth a hardcover. The next one is Brigands and Bread Knives, which is the third book in the Legends and Lattes series. And I absolutely loved this book. 5 stars, cozy fantasy. Oh, sorry. No, 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 no. Hardcover. I love this series, but I love the cozy fantasy vibe of Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust, which I just realized is missing from this list. So just do an imaginary insert for me. Bookshops and Bone Dust would definitely be special edition hardcover, and I'm going to be honest, I'll put Brigands and Bread Knives up there purely because if I've got the special edition hardcover of the other two, I have to for the third one. But it probably belongs more in hardcover in that it steps away from the cozy fantasy vibe where maybe not a lot happens, but you're just spending time in this nice environment with these nice people that you want to learn more about, and the characters make you melt. This still had all the characters that make you melt, but it is much more of a traditional fantasy adventure, which is not really what I go to that series for. If I want to go on a fantasy adventure, I'm probably going with something a little bit more traditional or action packed. So it was the first not 5 star read in that series for me. It was still a really good 4. I loved every single character. I really enjoyed reading this book. It just stepped away a little bit from what I thought the series was for me. Um, I think if you've read Bookshops and Bone Dust, you definitely saw the start of that. It's definitely more actiony than the first one was, and this sort of continues that trend. Whereas I'm looking for more traditional cozy fantasy because I read these between more intense reads. The next we have Carl's Doomsday Scenario, which I absolutely am going to put up here. It was every bit as good as the first one. It was absolutely awesome. Everything I said about the first one applies here. There's the only thing I want to add to that is that Donut as a character has no need or no right to be as complex as she is slowly becoming. And I'm here for it. I love it. So definitely going to continue on with that series. And I'm 3 books deep right now, and I want to try and finish them by the end of the year. So we'll see. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks, 4 star read. I most definitely enjoyed this book. It's a series of case studies of people with severe neurological symptoms. Each story is terrifying and fascinating. It is 100% worth your time. If you don't have a strong background in science or neurology or anything like that, I certainly don't. I was still able to engage with what I would consider a barely passable knowledge of that stuff from the child development courses I took at uni. Yeah, you should be fine. It's great. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Special edition hardcover, the entry into the Farseer trilogy, and Robin Hobb is a phenomenal writer. I enjoyed this so much. She has such an accessible writing style. Her characters are so 3 dimensional. The world she's creating fascinates me, and I want to find out more. This one book has prompted me. I'm probably going to read everything she's ever written. I'm already on to book 2 at the moment. It's awesome. It's so good. Get into it. Horus Rising is the first book in, I think it's called the Black Library, the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And it was a solid entry for me. I had a minimal experience with Warhammer 40k. I played a little bit when I was a teenager. I certainly didn't have extensive knowledge of the lore, but I think this book would be enjoyed more by people who are already entrenched in it. I enjoyed it well enough, but there were certainly references to things that even I, as someone who had played it a little bit, was still like, I'm not sure what that is. So there is a little bit of that, but overall, it was a good entry. The characters were more fleshed out than I thought they would need to be, given that they're based on action, tabletop gaming figures. But yeah, good entry into the series, some really good action, and more political intrigue than I probably expected. So yeah, quite good. Anne of Green Gables. That was delightful. It was such a sweet book with such a lovable, sweet protagonist. The main supporting cast, Marilla and Matthew, were so much fun to read. It's not a hard read. It's not something that's going to shock you in any way. But if I was going to teach a lesson in how to use setting and atmosphere to help build a character, this is your case study. Anne is wonderful. I think it's convinced me to finally do what my wife has been telling me to do because she's smarter than me. Go watch the TV show, because if they can replicate even a quarter of the charm of this book, it's one of my absolute favorites this year. I'm glad my mum died, Jeanette McCurdy. I'm going to go hardcover. I almost put this in special edition hardcover. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. The My goodness, it's an insight into the overbearing parent who forces their child into a career that they're not interested in. There's, uh, I don't know if I'm the kind of person that wants to give trigger warnings, but if you're sensitive to themes of parental abuse and um, all that kind of stuff, which I'm certainly sensitive to, but I find it maybe cathartic to read those experiences. It makes me feel a little bit less alone, um, from experiences with my father growing up. Um, the only thing about it that maybe sort of stopped it being that next tier up was the slightly episodic nature of the stories that she was telling. It helped to build an emotional narrative, but um, maybe I could have used more detail or insight into some more of the peripheral people apart from her and her mum, but it was really, really powerful. And the episodic nature also sort of stopped any of those stories from overstaying their welcome. So take that into account. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I'm going to give it a hardcover. It was a really good book. Dumas was paid by the word, and you can absolutely tell. I think in my review I said you follow Dantes on everything short of taking a poop, and that's about right. But at the same time, in a book that's so long and where great stretches of time happen and it's all plotting and scheming, something is always happening. And there are a diverse enough cast of characters that you're interested through the whole thing, I think. Um, I'm, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with 4 stars. The Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook, I'm going to put it in the special edition hardcover. Like I said, I can't have the other two, but this was actually a 4-star read for me. The setting that was chosen for this book, I don't want to give any spoilers, but it, I think, somewhat limited the adventuring element that I really enjoyed about the book. But that's really my only critique. I think he starts off with a disclaimer: try not to pay too much attention to it. If you're going to focus on that, you're going to get confused and it's going to annoy you. I think if you have to have a disclaimer for your setting, then maybe don't use that setting. But having said that, I still got all the character stuff, all the mobs and the killing and the creative bits and pieces and characters and armor and betrayal and a new character, or a character that gets a lot more focus that I really enjoyed. So still a 4.5, you know, but that setting I think did take it down a little bit for me. It's the first not 5-star read in this series for mine. And I'll do The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is an epic poem, but I found it in a book copy. It only took me half an hour, I think it was, to read, but a real old timey sailor's story with skeletons and ghosts and all that sort of jazz. So I definitely enjoyed it. Uh, Look, I'll put it here. Have a paperback copy, but you can get it online for free. Definitely worth a read, though. It'll take absolutely none of your time, and it was something a little bit different for me. And I'm definitely going to explore more epic poetry now. It certainly inspired that for me. And the last one, True Soldier Gentleman by Adrian Goldsworthy. I found a gorgeous hardcover of this book at an op shop for $3. And I think I bought it, its sequel. I should have got the third one. It was there, but I wasn't sure if I was going to. All right, back to it since I got cut off there. I found a really good hardcover copy of True Soldier Gentleman by Adrian Goldsworthy at an op shop for $3. It was absolutely gorgeous. I got the first and second book. I should have got the third one. I didn't know if I was going to like it or not, and I certainly liked it well enough to continue to read them. But it is a historical fiction set in the Napoleonic War. The author is a true historian of that period of time. And so the story apparently is remarkably historically accurate. So it gave a really good view into camp life. There was an element of it being a little bit slow because that was a deliberate representation of what warfare was like at the time. A lot of drilling and training and preparing and waiting around. But I still found it really interesting. So definitely worth a paperback. But the hardcovers are gorgeous. So I would recommend that if you come across them, you pick them up. Although I'm pretty sure it's really expensive on Amazon. So figure that one out. But that's my tier list. I hope you enjoyed spending some time here, finding out what I like and don't like. And I look forward to seeing you all later. So thank you very much.